Hi everybody, welcome back to the New York Stock Exchange. My name is Dave Vellante and you're watching AI Factories, the data centers of the future. And we have been here with NYSE Wired and theCUBE now. This is our ongoing series, and what's happening is enterprise AI is really moving from experimental stage really to implementation and scale. And there are some leaders that are actually learning a lot about AI. One of them is Dell Technologies. Doug Schmitt is here. He's the CIO and president of Dell Technologies Services. Doug, good to see you again.
Good to see you as well.
Thanks for coming in. Yeah, a lot going on. You're here in New York talking to customers. I just wrote a piece last night, and I was talking to John Rose about this, about some of the learnings that Dell has internally around AI. You guys were early on making big investments. Companies like JPMC, certainly other financial institutions. You're seeing guys like Walmart really leaning in, Eli Lilly, and of course Dell. You are responsible both for the internal activities, the technology activities, as well as running the services business. What's that like? How's that going? What are you guys learning that you can take to your customers?
Well, yeah, well, first of all, again, as always, thanks for having me, Dave. I think the last time we talked was Dell Technology World, and we talked about AI, but think about how much has changed since then. But the one thing that hasn't changed since just this last spring was us being customer zero, and that's what really, what you're asking is the internal, the IT side of it, the CIO, with the services, and it's really about taking our experiences on platform development with AI, how we're getting the results, the ROI for it, and then leveraging that with and for our customers as well on the services side, and taking what we learn with our customers and bringing that back internally as well. It's a two-way street for learning as customer zero.
How important is it, and was it for you, to get on that AI learning curve? When we talk to a lot of customers, they're saying, well, we really need to get our data in order before we spend a lot of money on AI. And what we found in talking to leaders, and I wonder if you found this, is actually AI can help you get your data in order. If you get your data infrastructure in order, and then it allows you to actually move faster. I was talking to a customer the other day, said, a lot of our data is still kind of messy.
Right.
But AI helps us get to the data that we really need, and we're moving much faster. What's your experience in that regard, and what do you think it means? First of all, is that valid, and what do you think it means for other customers?
Well, yeah, I think there's a couple pieces to that question. As you look at it, first of all, Dell helping our customers, listening to our customers, we were on this journey, Michael and Jeff were on this journey very early on in terms of the AI road, what the capabilities were. And so if you look back a couple, 3 years ago, we started experimenting and working on that very, very quickly. And where we ended up with is we started off a lot of experimentation. We had way too many projects though that we were experimenting with. We had somewhere, and we've talked about this before, around over 800. And what we started to do then is say, hey, look, how do we get that down to a manageable few that really had scale across the company? Think AI platforms. And when we stood back and looked at those 800, we said, look, there's 3 or 4 that will really have impact across the company, various groups inside of there, every group actually. And those were really around, think about the development programs for all of our software, our program engineers. So we have all of the AI set up for that. Then we had the sales side. How do we help them with that? That's our Dell sales chat, so we have that built. And then you have things like in the services side, which are our next best action. So these are platforms that scale across the entire company. We moved very quickly on it. Getting the data order and clean is absolutely important. There's no doubt about that. But you can't let that stand in the way. You got to jump in. Speed matters. Start to work with the data, clean the data up. And we actually learned that assigning the data, so for like the install base, our customer install base, services own making sure that's accurate. Customer data, that's obviously owned by the sales team. Making sure there was clean ownership of the data is the first place to start. Leveraging that data and then moving very, very quickly on your AI platforms or your AI use cases.
Dell actually had maybe an unfair advantage, because I know several years ago you embarked on like a data mesh initiative, and clean. You probably, unlike many companies, had a better data story. But so what's, from your vantage point, driving acceleration today? Where are we in that?
Well, I think there's a couple of things. You mentioned this at your opening. We've moved from the use case and the experiment and the testing into full-scale adoption of AI across all of the industries that we're seeing. By the way, not just commercial industries, whether that be government, nonprofits, you name it, it's moved from now, hey, how are we going to test this, to how are we actually leveraging results. And so we've been helping our customers with that journey, and we really do that in two different ways. One is we can help them with their AI journey from the use case, cleaning up, as you said, the data, finding the right infrastructure, architecture, helping them with their large language models or their models that they may need, all the way to running that. So we can do that. We can also help them a la carte, by the way, so it's not like you have to just choose one thing. We can help our customers scale their AI use cases across the company. And the second thing is we have our full lifecycle services that help them through their entire journey. Look, it's easy to implement the AI somewhat to get the value and the ROI. This is about services helping to provide the return on investment as quickly as possible for the outcome. And then, you know, what we're also seeing across the board with our customers is speed. Speed matters, and moving quickly for this rollout across for the value.
And that's what we've seen. I think about next best action.
Yes.
And I think you're now at least headed toward phase 3. And I remember the first phase, it was like it was a heavy lift, at least from my standpoint, but you know, the outcome was pretty impressive, and you could see the potential. And then it seems like, you know, project 1, okay, you know, we got to get our muscle memory down, and then you take the learnings from project 1, phase 1, bring that to phase 2 or project 2. And like you say, once you get down that learning curve, it creates a flywheel effect.
That is correct.
Have you seen that? And are you seeing that in your customer base in terms of where, you know, you see the MIT study, oh, nobody's getting ROI. But when you actually talk to the leaders, they're getting amazing ROI, the potential. They can't go fast enough because they're getting so much value out of it. Is that what you're seeing?
Well, I think that absolutely. I talked about those platforms. And that's best action, as you and I know, is about helping our customers. We started with the mission statement of how do we make it easier to help our customers resolve, solve service issues, or just information and data. So again, the mission statement is about first and foremost our customers and how do we make it easy for them. In that end, we took all of the structured data and unstructured data for our phase 1, making sure that data and information was clean, using AI then to determine with the issue that you may be having, how we apply all of that data to resolve your issue quickly and efficiently. And we were able to then make sure that our engineers, our service engineers, have that information and that data quickly pop up to help you. But more importantly, if you want to do that online, that same information is there so that you can do that real time. But we've done that in conjunction with our product groups, Arthur and Rob, so our CSG and ISG teams, and putting that further and further into the products themselves. So look, this is about preventing the issue from ever occurring. To your point about the speed up of AI, realizing the first value is obviously and still is about helping our customers, and then using that AI to push it further upstream so we don't even have the issues.
I want to ask you how Dell Services is evolving and in terms of how it helps customers. So you think about the traditional PDIM model, planning, design, implementation, management, largely linear. I would say it's, you know, very low risk if you know what you're doing and you bring a services partner in, but largely linear and incremental. It feels like we're in a new era where you're on this flywheel and the business value is, the potential is enormous. We've heard Michael Dell talk about this.
Yes.
How have you changed your thinking and your model in terms of how you're helping customers, in terms of the way in which you approach it, linear versus nonlinear? And I don't know if that's the right way to think about it. I'd love your opinion on that. And what do customers have to do to prepare to succeed in AI?
Well, so I think, look, in terms of that, there's obviously a lot of moving pieces, and all of our customers are different and are different parts of the journey. So, but look, as we stand back and help our customers, it's really about understanding what their mission and what they're trying to accomplish is. And to your point, the services life cycle that we talk about, which is the traditional, let's go in and do a consulting, we look at how we are then going to architect and implement what you purchase, then deployment, and then the management and the support of that technology solution. What you get to after that, to your point, is that's becoming circular. Then there's the getting the results, helping our customer determine how to improve those results, constantly leveraging AI for that circle for improvement and improving the strategy as they go forward. I think that is what you're hitting on, and that is what we're seeing. So it's not just the initial ROI you're getting repeat ROI and improved ROI as that continues to speed up and go along, and we can help and do help our customers with that. I'll give you an example. We have Guthrie Clinic, and they help patients, obviously. What they've seen with us helping them is an 80-minute reduction in wait time for their patients. They saw a half a day reduction in people staying in ICU. These are real tangible results for their customers and we as patients, right? And so they look at that, they're taking that data and they're just almost doubling down on it, and we're helping them with that as well, so how do they constantly improve it? So you're going to see that happen on a large scale and constantly across all these industries.
Yeah, I mean, if you can cut the time in half in which a patient's in an ICU, you open up greater capacity. Of course, med tech, healthcare.
That's right.
Is the AI and healthcare.
I think it's
amazing.
unlimited.
So you're going to be able to expand the capacity without necessarily, adding more labor. I mean, to a point. In
I think
ways
it's a better experience. I mean, I don't know about yourself. I want to get helped, but I don't really want to be in a hospital too long.
We've all been sitting there going, when do we get out of here, right?
So they're improving the experience for their patients and their customers, and that's what it's about.
What are some of the stumbling blocks that you see that customers should avoid, that you're helping them avoid?
Well, yeah, there's a couple on that one as well. One is, look, you remember the old RPA days.
Yeah, of course.
I think sometimes the concern or the danger could be looking at your processes today and just automating those, right? That was RPA back in the day. I don't know, I lose track of time, 5-6 years ago when we started that. What it's about now with AI is reimagining. You don't have to just look at the processes you're doing, is what are we trying to do in terms of a transformation, providing better service, better capabilities, whatever it is that you're helping deliver, and then reimagining it with AI. And so it's not just about automating today's processes, it's about reimagining, modernizing where you head. And I think that's one of the pitfalls you could have if you don't stand back and look at it and have it. Now, I would tell you, what we tell customers is, look, think big, implement in a small way, and then move fast, right? And that could be it. The other one is look, this is a huge transformation in terms of what your team members are going through. There's a cultural, a process aspect to this. You have to help your team members with and through this culturally. For a lot of us, AI is going to help us do more of what we love. I love being in front of customers, helping them achieve their outcomes. AI is helping me do that, right? And we have to explain to people, you're going to be able to do more. Let's just talk about, we were talking about healthcare. You're going to be able to, if you're a nurse, be in front of your patients more. If you're a doctor, helping your patients more. So look, there's a technology piece to this, having and knowing how to leverage AI to transform, and then the second one is this cultural piece with your team members and your constituents. How do you bring them along and make sure that you reimagine it?
It's interesting you mentioned RPA. The problem I always have with RPA is exactly what you described. It's like, how do you avoid paving the cow path, I call it, And the answer was, well, there's actually value in doing that, and that's why it took off for a while, and then it sort of hit a wall, and people said, oh, it's just not really transformational, and that's where we are today. Dell is kind of a unicorn in that you actually are building AI factories internally, and you're not only that, but you're supplying customers to build AI factories. Part of the initiative in the AI factories data center of the future was we noticed that a lot of most customers have data in the cloud, but many said to us, we're not going to put all our data in the cloud. We got certain systems, and we need to develop a strategy that is hybrid. and that's what we're seeing play out. How do you see it playing out in customers? I mean, the world is hybrid. We know this. What are your top customers doing in terms of creating that balance between what they do in the cloud, managing costs, and actually building infrastructure on-prem? I know there's a lot of activity going on in what I'll call the neo-clouds and managed service providers. So that's very clear. What about customers, whether it's in colos or in their own premises? What are you seeing there?
Well, yeah, look, it is, like you said, it's a hybrid world, and we know it's a hybrid world. That's where it's going to be and is. But let's also go back to what you're saying, which is data is the fuel for AI. And that's what we were talking about, how clean it is, how it works, but it is the fuel for AI. I also think you have to realize that it's also the IP. It's the thing that makes, in a lot of cases, industries, companies unique, and so you want to make sure you're watching that, and it's yours. How do you leverage that data for how you build a better outcome, a better mousetrap, a better strategy for what you're doing? And so, as you go through and you think about it, you have to have, to your point, I think, is a data strategy. Just like you have an infrastructure strategy, what's your data strategy? I think making sure that your sophisticated or your confidential data is protected is important. I think making sure you can scale it. We talk about tokens, we talk about AI, we talk about the model, the unstructured data, but how are you going to use agentic and AI? How are you going to be charged for it? How is it going to pass through, and how do you scale that data and then deliver the outcomes?
And I wanted to ask you about agentic. I mean, we're well beyond RAG-based chatbots, which are kind of nice. They were kind of not really that hard to spin up, but the impact was modest, but okay. But now, agentic, Jensen talks about this all the time when we start to do reasoning and you now have agents. And so what are you doing internally with agentic, and what are you seeing, how are you seeing customers adopt agents?
Well, we're leveraging agents. As you said, we talked about the evolution of next best action, or in product development, or in the sales side. We're using agents in all of those areas to help us deliver, again, that outcome. And it's really about then taking that process of the unstructured data plus your process and putting it in so that you are able to reason and get an outcome. So we're leveraging it across all those. We're seeing our customers do the same thing. So agentic is absolutely real. And we're seeing the results from it. Look, one of the things that we're working on with our customers and internally is you have to have an orchestration layer for that, and you have to have a control tower. If you think about all of the different agents coming from various aspects, whether it be from your internal built agents you had maybe purchased, or whether you're in SaaS. So we're working through that, and then obviously security is always a big one for agentic. But all those things are being worked and real, and we're seeing great progress across the board.
Of course, we like to use baseball analogies, and we talked about early innings. Maybe it's still early in the cycle, but we're beyond, like the uniforms are getting dirty, home plate's getting dug in. We're starting to get toward those middle innings. At least it feels that way. Do you agree with that? And Eric Brynjolfsson, the economist, who's now at Stanford, was at MIT. I don't know, maybe that's a step up, maybe not. It depends, are you East Coast or West Coast? But he calls it a J curve. We used to S curves. He's calling it a J curve in terms of the productivity J curve. Do you feel like we're entering the middle innings and we're going to start to see, massive increases in productivity? Still got a ways to go. What's your perspective?
Well, look, I don't know what inning we're in per se, but look, we're past the beginning for sure, and it is real. It's catching fire, and there are absolutely results. And what's more is we're seeing it expand. As you said at the beginning, it started with large companies, some of the large hyper companies, but now it's everywhere. It's expanded both vertically and horizontally across markets, and we're seeing it across the board. And so it is absolutely delivering the results. I've seen that internally with services and Dell Technologies, and we're seeing it with the customers we help through AI Factory, and substantial results. And so we are well past the beginning, and we're into absolutely the scaling and the execution and delivering substantial results.
Doug Schmitt on the front lines, inside of Dell and with your customers. I can't thank you enough for coming in.
Thank you as always, Dave. Appreciate it.
NYSE Wired. And thank you for watching. Keep it right there. We got more action from the New York Stock Exchange. The bell's about to ring. This is Dave Vellante for John Furrier. theCUBE plus NYSE Wired, AI factories, data centers of the future. We'll be right back right after this short break.